My name is Paul Chakravarti. I run product management for Google SecOps/Chronicle. And I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, Spencer Lichtenstein, who is a product manager leading the AI efforts for security operations, as well as very excited to have Mark Ruiz join us. He's the head of cybersecurity analytics at Pfizer. I'm really excited. In this session, we will present some of the AI agents that we have built to enhance security operations. See, on the agenda, we will briefly discuss AI and security, Gemini in security operations. We will do demonstrations of a couple of use cases related to investigation and hunting. And then we will learn how Pfizer is, has just embarked on their journey to improve their security operations with Chronicle and AI. So our goal with generative AI is to help overcome some of the common security challenges. AI truly has the ability to transform the SOC by solving issues that have plagued the SOC for a long time. So the first one is about identifying threats, leveraging AI to detect those early unique threats and prevent the patient ones before they have wide-scale impact. The second objective is to reduce the toil in this SOC, right? Today, security analysts are spending hours in repetitive and cumbersome workflows and tasks. AI has the opportunity to radically shift the time it requires to do some of these tasks and hence accelerate the decision-making and troubleshooting investigations. And third, we all know there is a skill shortage in cybersecurity. It's real. And how can we use AI to actually help scale expertise so that we can enable professionals to quickly investigate and respond to threats, as well as newcomers and newcomers to boost their knowledge so that everybody gets more time to higher order problems. So at Next, we announced several new capabilities of Gemini security agents. Some of them are Gemini in security operations, which we will talk about today. How can we accelerate response, transform investigation, and simplify hunts? Gemini in security command center, some of the core things that were introduced are explaining multi-stage attack paths. And then in threat intel, Gemini in threat intel helps tap into Mandiant's massive corpus of threat intelligence data and to get insights in a few seconds about their tactics and techniques. So all of our security agents are built off of this powerful security language model. It's a domain-specific language model called SecLM. We have tuned Gemini's latest and greatest model with data from a multitude of security sources, so from Mandiant, from VirusTotal, from open source, from MITRE, and so forth. And we have then used that data to tune and ground the model to solve specific security use cases. And then this all runs on Vertex AI. You all have heard a lot about Vertex AI at Next. It's our next-gen enterprise-grade AI platform. And Google is the only company that's offering the full stack, from the agents to the language model to the Vertex AI and the infrastructure, the TPUs, where the workloads are running. And we take extreme pride in the scale and the security privacy commitment we have to AI. So moving on, let's talk specifically about how we are leveraging Gemini in security operations. The three core objectives we have here are transforming investigation, accelerating response, and simplifying hunts. Google was the first major cloud provider to make Gen AI available for security operations. So today, from a transforming investigation perspective, investigation in the SOC today has several friction points. There's massive amounts of data. Then there is the need to connect the dots between the data, between the UIs, between the products, the users, the tools. And also, at the end of the day, you're still ending up spending time analyzing incidents that have happened in the past. So that knowledge is lost. So by providing an AI-trained, intelligent conversational chat experience called the Investigation Assistant, we are bringing to you the ability to use Gemini to drive an end-to-end investigation from triage to looking into, to asking questions in natural language, asking follow-ups, getting suggested recommendations, and then finally finding the root cause and taking actions on that. The second, rating response, we are presenting summaries, case summaries of what has happened so far in an incident or a case. Instead of having to look through several hundreds of alerts, we give you summaries that gives you very clear instructions on what to do next, and also allows you to, and we're also introducing the ability to create and update playbooks in natural language. And then finally, on simplifying hunts, how do we enable threat hunting by bringing threat intel data in the same console with your event data, your log data, so that we can enable SOC analysts to leverage that data to ask open-ended threat questions and even create rules from emerging threats. Some common use cases on investigation, like you can ask questions like, when was the first time this user was seen, or how many other alerts share the same IP? On the response side, you can ask Gemini to build a playbook that triggers on an alert and then has a decision tree to say, if X, then do A or do B. You can create a detection rule from this investigation or potentially close the case. And then when you're hunting, you can hunt for, you can ask questions to look for indicators of a threat actor, APT43, and find all the devices where that hash was present. So these are some of the use cases, and we'll put these words into action very soon. Let's do that, and let's jump into how all this comes together, and we'll walk you through a few simple use cases in the demo. So the first use case is about a SOC analyst who is investigating a case and responding to it. So bear with me. So as a SOC analyst, I come in, and I come to my SecOps platform, and I have a unified experience to look at this wall of cases. These are only the most important prioritized cases that are shown to me, because there are cases that have automatically been triaged because they were false positives, or there was an automated playbook that ran. Now, this case is automatically grouped and shows me 2 alerts that are seemingly disconnected, so I want to know what's going on. So Gemini comes in and tells me more about this case, that there is APT43 is a threat actor, there is a file with a certain hash, there is a process was launched on a VM called LinMiner by a user, Chris, and it also gives me certain next steps of what I should investigate further. Now, I'm interested in this specific, I got a good set of signals, I'm interested in this applied threat intel alert, which is automatically enriched with our threat data. Here I can see the entities that were associated, so that validates what I saw in the summary. And now there's one critical information here, which is there is a malware called Hangman v2, which I'm going to go and look for. So here I'm going and ambient interface, and I'm asking a question about, tell me more about this malware called Hangman v2. So at this point in time, Gemini is going to go in and run through their corpus of data and give me some initial results about Hangman v2, right? Gives me a little bit of detail about that. But I want to know, as a malware, the first thing I want to know is how does it persist? Because those are the signals I need to look for in my environment. So I go ahead and ask Gemini, how does Hangman v2 persist? And again, this is looking through the data and is going to give me very specific instructions on persistence, that it persists by adding itself to the registry with the following command, and the command adds a new registry key name system to run. So this is a pretty standard technique that attackers use. And one thing to note is that Gemini also gives me the reference and the inference of how it has come to this conclusion. So I'm interested in this specific registry key modification with this registry key. So I'm going to go and see if this exists in my environment. And here I invoke the Gemini investigation assistant, which I just explained before. And it gives me a set of initial things to get started on. But I will go ahead and ask, type in a query in natural language, which is, find any registry modification events for this registry key, which I just copied from the other interface in the last 2 weeks. And I'm going to run this query. And Gemini goes in, translates this query into a search query. Now, here I don't have to learn a new syntax, a new language. It gives me a pretty well-constructed search query. I run the search. And while it's running the search, as you can see, it automatically switches the context to the search page. So one of the things we are doing with Gemini is it's not a standalone Q&A app. It's very deeply embedded with your experience in the SOC. So you can see the dashboard, and it tells me that there are 14 events related to registry key modification. And voila, if I hover over the key event, I can see that specific key. That confirms that it is probably related to the malware. And then I want to know, is this the only host, or other hosts are impacted as well? So I asked that question, how many hosts are impacted? And it tells me there's one unique host. It's the same Lynn Minor host that we saw early on. What I'm going to do is, to prevent this from happening in the future, I'm going to ask Gemini to create a rule, which is a detection rule, and say, can you create a rule from this activity? Gemini created the rule. I open the rule editor, and I see it's created a rule for registry modifications for that specific key, and I'm good to go. So in a few clicks, I went from learning about a malware, learning about its persistence, searching for it in my environment, ensuring nobody else has that, no other VM is impacted, and then creating a rule that can prevent or detect this in the future. So now I want to go create a playbook, because when this kind of an alert triggers, what should I do to automatically perhaps enrich and so forth? So I'm going to go and create a playbook. I'm going to use, this is our SOAR platform, which allows you to create playbooks. It's all integrated into the same user experience. And it also lets you run simulations of the playbooks you create. So I'm going to invoke Gemini again, and again type in a pretty natural language query to create a playbook. There's some examples given here, but here I'm going to say build a playbook for this registry key change alerts, and then the playbook must enrich all entity types. I won't read it out, but you can see what it's typing. Entity types with virus total information, mandate information, Google IAM information, all of that. And I'm going to also ask it to do certain things, like if it does detect this, then you should update the tags or raise the severity of the alert. So I'm going to give it some specific instructions. So it's saying decide if there is anything suspicious, and create case tags and prioritize the case accordingly. So when I hit generate playbook, this takes a little bit, but it's running in the background to create a playbook. This is our, in the absence of this, what you would be doing is using the drag and drop capabilities. So you'd be dragging and dropping, configuring every single box, the triggers, the decision trees, all of that in a manual way to test it. But with this capability now, it gives me the trigger, the actions, and I create the playbook, and there you go. A playbook is generated. It shows me the alert type that triggers, the different types of enrichment that is done, and then also the decision tree to say, OK, if it is malicious, then what tags do you need to add, or whether you need to escalate this alert or not. So having said that, so we went through an entire, I guess, I think I have to pause this. OK. So we went through an entire use case to start from a SOC analyst looking at a case, looking at alerts correlated automatically for the analyst in the case, finding the threat information directly, finding what the persistence methods were, searching for it, isolating the host, creating a rule, and creating even a response playbook, all powered by Gemini and with natural language. How amazing is that? With that, I'm going to hand over to Spencer to walk through the next set of use cases.
Awesome. Great to see folks. So maybe before I get into this use case, it'd be great to understand how many security practitioners do we have in the audience? Okay. So great. I will be criticized for any mistakes in this demo, which is awesome. So not to confuse folks further, but we're going to flip from APT 43 to APT 34. This was very unintentional when we created this, but the interesting piece that I'm going to walk through here is just extending Gemini's power into a use case that's more focused on sort of emerging threats or hunting through larger amounts of data. And one thing to keep in mind as I go through this is that we automatically at Google are taking the latest frontline intelligence and threats, and we're applying it natively in your environment. We're doing indicator matching. We're giving you rules that you can deploy. So you don't necessarily have to do this through Gemini all the time, but as most folks know here, there's a lot of threat indicators out in the wild, and so we may apply things that could be noisy, or we may not apply things because we don't want to create a lot of noise in your environment. And so this gives you a great example of a use case where you are looking to siphon through a lot of information in order to maybe create a rule, in this case, at the end. So I'm going to let this play and start to talk through what I've been asked here to sort of start my hunt mission. So in this scenario, really, I am looking to understand, hey, what is APT 34, first of all? What threat indicators might be attributed to this actor? Is this applicable in my environment? And normally to do this, I need to go open a number of different tools, right? I might need to go look in Mandiant Threat Intelligence, look at those reports, and I need to figure out how to operationalize this information. So that is very sort of toilsome. There's a lot of manual process involved. And what we've done here is not just plugged into those data sources, but we're also intersecting that data with your unique environment, which is why it's taking a little bit of time to do this today, admittedly. But you get back this really rich summary around this threat actor, right? An Iranian-backed cyber espionage group. A little bit of information about the techniques and tactics, and more importantly, static indicators to start to go look at. So I'm going to take this next step, go look for these indicators, and we can see pretty quickly that there's a lot of noise in this data. I'm not surprised by this because static indicator matching can create a lot of noise. And what I'm going to use Gemini for here is starting to sort of denoise and understand what might actually be happening that could merit my attention, or how might I pivot this and get back to my manager who's saying, is there something to be concerned about? So I've gone and filtered out a bit more and sort of denoised to focus on this host that I was alerted to. Now I'm getting a little bit more interesting because I'm down to 2 events, right? These are 2 network connection events. There's a specific host that was that's called out in this, and there's an external IP address. And before I determine, hey, do I want to expand this scope further, I'm going to go back to Gemini and get some more information around this threat actor group. So is this technique or tactic something that they're known for? We're in the process right now of adding some more capabilities to get more explicit answers leveraging grounded MITRE data, which would be really valuable for this use case. And in this case, we're sort of leveraging the data from Mandiant in order to do this. And as I'm looking at these events, I'm just trying to understand, is this noisy indicator matching? Do I want to expand maybe and look at these hosts more? And I get an answer back, more indicators I could look for, but more importantly, I get an answer back talking about, hey, APT 34 does have some known techniques in this sort of network-related world. Here's some threat campaigns that are associated with it. So the next step that I'm taking in this sort of data discovery regime that I'm operating in is I'm starting to adjust my scope. And I'm saying, let's kind of pivot here and go and look more for the host and the external IP that have been called out. because I'm less focused on these domains and hashes that might be a little noisy in my environment, and I'm more focused on what else might this have affected, right? Do I want to craft a detection rule? And as I work through this, and you can sort of watch this workflow, I think a few pieces to call out here is, from my experience, 10 years ago, sitting in a seat doing this, hunting is a really iterative process, right? It's subject to a lot of interpretation, a lot of opinion. You're looking to create something unique to your environment that detects specifically and doesn't distract you. And so I'm expanding and iterating naturally through Gemini, so I don't need to go understand my syntax. And I'm ultimately going and looking and saying, bring me back a bunch more data on a host and IPs so I can start to understand what else might be affected here. Ideally, Gemini is able to really tell me, hey, this looks bad or this looks good, but I think in reality, for most practitioners, we know that is subject to a lot of nuance, and what might be bad in one person's environment might be normal in another. And so this is helping me analyze, and I'm seeing here that I have a subset of events, 40,000 or so, and a user called out. Getting a little bit more interesting, right? A few alerts, not many. So I'm refining down on this user, and I'm looking more now to see what might I want to do? Like, do I want to craft a rule? Do I want to interrogate these file creation events? And more importantly, let's just imagine I'm a little rusty here in my analysis. What are file creation events from CrowdStrike, right? Do I need to go open up a CrowdStrike console and look at those events? I'm just asking Gemini in this case, what are these file creation events? Can you give me a little bit more information? We get back a fairly clean response, and the next step in my head is, all right, I've pivoted from this APT group, right? I've gotten a lot of indicator matching that's noisy. I'm now adjusting my scope, and I've looked for host events and a user that was interesting. I want to create a rule out of this to at least start my next process of let's set up a detection in the future that might be specific around some file creation activity, and probably more importantly, and this is where in the course of this demo, I actually, when I was recording this, didn't realize this was going to work kind of as well as it did. I messed up and didn't add my IP address to this rule originally, and I went back and iterated and said, actually, can you go add this IP in? And it worked very well. And it actually went and updated, and you'll see it kind of updates the rule logic and the rule naming, giving me this connective tissue, right? We're keeping track of this, and we're just trying to drive a process where you as a user can focus a lot more on the outcome. I've crafted this rule. I've gone from hunting for an APT group. I've adjusted my scope, and now I have a detection that I could test. I could adjust the logic. I could say, hey, this is for possible APT34 threat activity. And I've done this natively with the help of Gemini without moving anywhere else, and in probably 5 minutes. And I think that used to take 20 minutes, right? 30 minutes, and a number of different screens. So that's the takeaway of this, is I think there's a lot of toil and manual activity and thinking that goes into these hunting and investigation processes. We're trying to move that forward with Gemini to really help you get to a decision much faster and leverage all of the power of security operations, the applied intel, the other data that we have available to us through SecLM to just accelerate that entire process. And that's the piece that, from a practitioner point, I think is very exciting to think about. So I'm going to get Mark on stage to talk from a point of view of a customer and give you some cool examples, I think, of this in the real world.
And I will caveat this with, thank you very much, with the, we're just getting started, right? We're a fairly mature cyber organization. We've made lots of investments in different technologies, as many of your organizations have. but we did see the value in generative AI, and in this particular case, Gemini, and what it can provide us. So to start off, I just want to level set a little bit. Start off with some of the pain points that are really not unique to us, right? It's speed and volume of and variety of cyber attacks, right? Every day there's increased volume, the speed of the velocity of the attacks coming at us, and the variety is probably the most interesting part. We have ransomware, phishing and advanced phishing attacks, leveraging AI. Now lots of tool suites are leveraging, and threat actors are leveraging a lot of generative AI tools to accelerate their attacks even more so. So that's one of the key points that I wanted to talk through. I guess in terms of the next point was the ever-evolving kind of like, as our digital footprint continues to increase, there's more volumes of data. That is really putting pressure on us to kind of think through how do we sift through it, how do we tune, how do we kind of do some engineering to kind of sift through that and understand what potential threats lie within it. And then the third one is maximizing our technology stack. We're being asked to do much more with less, always and often, right? As my budget hasn't increased with the increased attacks, hasn't increased with the increase in terms of volume of data. 3 years ago, in the last 3 years, we've increased about 300% in terms of security telemetry data and daily volume, right? So that's a lot of pressure for us to sift through that and understand where potential threats are within our environment. Where are we today? So I alluded to this earlier. We made some investments. One of the key investments is SOAR, right? And I won't go through the acronym. I think you've been in many sessions that talk through that, and it was alluded to earlier. But it really was a game changer and pivotal for us to invest in this solution to help us be able to get through the vast amounts of data, a variety of different alerts that we had to deal with. But I don't think that's going to be enough with the advent of generative AI potential attacks coming at us. So what do we do next? The next one is where we focus on tuning, right? My team is really tasked with bringing in all this data in. It's to filter out, weed through, to identify those needles in that haystack, so to speak, prioritize our tuning, the vast amounts of alerts, and how do we deal with that. We've made a really focused effort there. This is really table stakes. I think anyone that's bringing vast amounts of data in, they kind of go through leverage SOAR, or they do tuning and data engineering and kind of try to sift through the volumes of data. And then the second one is I think it's one of the things that I alluded as a pain point, but I'm a true believer then that is more logs is more better. Certainly, as our footprint increased, we bring in AWS logs and Azure logs and all sorts of different areas in terms of telemetry data. We need to be able to bring that in, scale up quickly, and we've scaled up quite a bit, and we're going to continue on this journey moving forward. Where are we headed? While I mentioned that we were very, very early in the Gemini, we were an adopter of Chronicle, and we're probably 1 year into that journey. Most recently with the Gemini piece, we've identified some, areas where there are capabilities that today would help us accelerate in our triage process. One of the examples that we just talked about most recently was the investigation assistant's ability to synthesize and combine all the contextual information into an easy thing that could be ported into a SOAR, for instance, for portability in terms of the investigator handoff, just to be able to simplify and accelerate kind of that entire process. The second point where we were focusing on advancing SOAR, I think generative AI, and in particular Gemini, offers us a lot of different opportunities to accelerate the initial triage process, the summarization of that in the context around the investigation, all that chat information being ported over, helps us accelerate creating incident response kind of workflows and things of that nature. So I think it's going to be the next evolution for us is to kind of go through and enhance SOAR and then go beyond SOAR. What does that look like? And I think Gemini is going to be a game changer for us. Adaptive learning, a little more forward-looking. This is where I'm keen to understand, and Spencer and team on how they're going to innovate and have the models learn, so the prompts refine and kind of understand Pfizer. So as we search, we go through these chats and search through the data, does the model start to learn for us and refine, right, in terms of refine those responses so we can further accelerate our responses. And then the last one is I'm a true believer, while I have a team that's very, very advanced in terms of incident responders and threat hunters, detection engineering, what have you, I think the war for talent's not going to end across cyber anytime soon. So the democratization of advanced analysis techniques is going to be crucial. As you saw earlier in the demos, is that the assistant piece can help us create rules, help create playbooks. It can help kind of synthesize lots of different information very quickly and be able to cut through all that noise a lot more swiftly. So that's where we're headed today. I'm looking forward to what this conference is going to look like a year from now. You've heard AI all over the place, Gemini this and Vertex and all of that. I think the next, no pun intended, we'll have lots of folks talking about, hey, we've done this, we've built this, we're using Gemini and across security operations.